For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On a crisp autumn morning in 1995, 26-year-old Rachel Foster and her boyfriend Sean Garcia ventured into Germany's mystical Black Forest, armed with cameras and determination to expose environmental crimes. They never emerged. Despite an extensive search operation led by the Baden-Württemberg State Police, the young activists seemed to have vanished into the ancient woods that had inspired countless fairy tales. For 24 years, their families lived with the crushing weight of uncertainty, while the dark canopy of Schwarzwald kept its secrets. Then, in 2019, a routine construction project near a hiking trail uncovered something that would shatter the silence of the forest. This is the complete investigation into what happened to Rachel Foster and Sean Garcia, two idealistic souls who dared to challenge the shadows of the Black Forest. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. On the morning of September 15, 1995, the ancient trees of Germany's Black Forest stood silent witness to what would become one of the region's most haunting mysteries. Rachel Foster, a promising environmental journalism student, and her boyfriend Sean Garcia, had ventured deep into the Schwarzwald's remote reaches, their passion for environmental justice driving them forward into the misty depths of Europe's most legendary forest. The couple's last known campsite lay nestled in a clearing surrounded by towering spruce and ancient oak trees, nearly 15 kilometers from the nearest hiking trail. Their small green tent, chosen specifically for its ability to blend with the forest canopy, contained all the hallmarks of serious environmental investigators: cameras, notebooks filled with detailed observations, and GPS coordinates marking suspicious logging activities. That final morning began like any other. According to Rachel's last diary entry, recovered from their campsite, she and Sean had discovered concerning evidence of fresh cutting in a protected old-growth area. "The stumps are fresh," she wrote. "Some of these trees were centuries old. Someone's operating here at night and we're going to prove it." The entry ended there, the pen stroke trailing off as if she had been interrupted. Forest Ranger Klaus Weber discovered their abandoned camp 3 days later during a routine patrol. The scene he encountered would haunt him for decades to come. A pot of coffee sat cold on their camping stove, 2 mugs beside it, one still half full. Their sleeping bags lay unzipped but made up, suggesting they had risen normally that morning. Rachel's prized camera bag was missing, but her other equipment remained untouched. Sean's boots still stood by the tent entrance, though his hiking shoes were gone. The initial search operation mobilized within hours of Weber's report. Helicopters swept the dense canopy, while ground teams with tracking dogs combed the forest floor. The dogs showed particular interest in a trail leading northwest from the camp, but lost the scent after about 200 meters. The forest, it seemed, had swallowed Rachel and Sean without a trace. As autumn crept across the Black Forest, painting its ancient boughs in brilliant reds and golds, the search continued. Local volunteers joined professional teams, calling out Rachel and Sean's names into the vast green silence. Their families arrived from America, keeping vigil in the small town of Freudenstadt, their hopes dimming with each passing day. Detective Petra Mueller, then a young officer with the Baden-Württemberg State Police, recognized something ominous in the case from the start. Everything about their disappearance felt wrong, she would later recall. 2 experienced outdoor people don't simply vanish without leaving signs. The forest tells stories if you know how to listen, but in this case, it was as if someone had deliberately silenced those stories. As winter approached and snow began to dust the forest floor, the active search was scaled back. The case remained open, but with no body, no crime scene, and no clear evidence of foul play, investigators had little to work with. Rachel's mother, Catherine Foster, refused to leave Germany for 3 months, convinced her daughter would emerge from the trees with another of her remarkable stories. Sean's father, Miguel Garcia, planted a young oak tree near their campsite, vowing to return each year until he learned the truth. The Black Forest had long been home to dark legends and folklore, tales of travelers who ventured in never to return. But this was 1995, not the Middle Ages. People didn't simply disappear without leaving traces. Yet Rachel Foster and Sean Garcia had done exactly that, vanishing into the green shadows of the Schwarzwald as completely as characters in a Grimm's fairy tale. Their disappearance would remain one of Germany's most perplexing mysteries for nearly a quarter-century, until the forest finally revealed its secret, a truth more sinister than anyone had imagined, buried beneath years of silence and shadows, waiting for the day when new ground would be broken and old crimes would finally come to light. Detective Petra Mueller's first week on the Foster Garcia case revealed the complexity lurking beneath what initially appeared to be a routine missing persons investigation. Each morning, she spread her growing case file across her desk at Baden-Württemberg State Police Headquarters, methodically piecing together the puzzle of their final days in the Black Forest. The abandoned campsite told a story of abrupt departure. Laboratory analysis of the cold coffee in the mugs showed no foreign substances, and fingerprint examination revealed only Rachel and Sean's prints. Their phones, found in the tent, contained photos from the previous evening, mundane shots of their dinner preparation and the surrounding forest. The final image, taken at 9:47 p.m., showed Sean smiling by their campfire. Rachel's journalism professors at the University of Freiburg painted a picture of a meticulous investigator. Professor Hans Weber provided Mueller with Rachel's research notes from the months leading up to her disappearance. She had traced a pattern, Weber explained, of luxury furniture appearing in high-end European showrooms, pieces made from wood that shouldn't legally exist on the market. Ancient Black Forest oak, protected by conservation laws. Sean's background proved equally relevant. His work with the International Forest Conservation Alliance had earned him both acclaim and enemies. In the months before his disappearance, he had helped expose 3 illegal logging operations in protected areas of Romania. His colleagues described a man who understood the dangers of his work, but remained undeterred. Mueller's investigation took an intriguing turn when she discovered Rachel's final bank transactions. 3 days before their disappearance, she had purchased additional memory cards for her camera and made a curious call to an environmental law firm in Berlin. The firm's records showed Rachel had scheduled a meeting for the following week, though the subject of the meeting remained unspecified. The search of the surrounding forest yielded subtle but disturbing clues. 200 meters from the campsite, where the tracking dogs had lost the scent, investigators found fresh tire tracks masked by scattered branches. Analysis suggested a heavy vehicle, possibly a logging truck, had been present within the same time frame as the disappearance. Local foresters reported unusual activity in the weeks preceding the incident. Night watchman Karl Heinz had logged several complaints about mechanical sounds deep in the forest during his midnight shifts, but subsequent patrols found nothing amiss. The sounds had stopped immediately after Rachel and Sean's disappearance. Detective Mueller's growing suspicion that the couple had stumbled upon something dangerous was reinforced by their personal effects. Rachel's notebooks contained coded coordinates and cryptic references to delivery schedules. Sean's laptop, recovered from the tent, had been deliberately wiped clean the day before they vanished, suggesting they might have been protecting sensitive information. As autumn deepened, the investigation faced mounting obstacles. The forest itself seemed to conspire against them, heavy rains washing away potential evidence, dense foliage concealing whatever secrets lay beneath. Local logging companies cooperated superficially with police inquiries, providing documentation that appeared flawless on the surface. Mueller's superiors began pressuring her to reclassify the case as a probable accident, suggesting the couple might have fallen into one of the forest's many ravines. But the detective couldn't reconcile this theory with the evidence. Experienced hikers don't simply fall, she argued, and accidents do. And erase tracks or explain wiped computers. By December 1995, the active investigation began to slow. Mueller had assembled a substantial file documenting suspicious patterns in the local timber industry, but without concrete evidence linking these activities to the disappearance, she couldn't justify continuing the intensive investigation. The case remained open, but joined the growing stack of unsolved mysteries in the department's archives. Yet something about this case refused to let go of Mueller. Perhaps it was the memory of Catherine Foster's eyes as she begged the detective not to give up, or the way Sean's father tended that memorial oak tree with such devoted care. The forest held its secrets close, but Mueller knew that sometimes the deepest truths simply waited for the right moment to emerge from the shadows. The years following Rachel and Sean's disappearance settled like layers of autumn leaves over the Black Forest, each season adding another blanket of silence to their unsolved case. By 1997, the one-surgeon investigation had slowed to occasional reviews of aging files and following up on increasingly infrequent tips that inevitably led nowhere. Dr. Wolfgang Klein, the region's leading forest conservation specialist, spent countless hours analyzing the areas where Rachel and Sean had conducted their final research. His findings painted a disturbing picture of systematic changes in the forest's ancient growth patterns, but without concrete evidence linking these changes to the disappearance. His reports gathered dust alongside countless others in the case files. The Foster and Garcia families marked each anniversary with quiet vigils in the forest clearing where their children were last seen. The young oak tree planted by Miguel Garcia grew stronger each year, its branches reaching skyward as if searching for answers among the ancient canopy. Catherine Foster continued sending Christmas cards to Detective Mueller, each one containing the same gentle reminder: "We haven't forgotten, and we know you haven't either." Local newspapers gradually reduced their coverage from front-page headlines to brief mentions on anniversary dates. The mystery became part of Black Forest folklore, whispered about in village pubs and retold with embellishments that strayed ever further from the truth. Some claimed to have seen the young couple walking the forest trails at dusk, while others insisted they had fled to start a new life somewhere far from Germany's borders. Detective Mueller's occasional case reviews revealed a pattern that troubled her deeply. Several small logging companies that had operated in the area during 1995 had since dissolved, their records becoming increasingly difficult to trace. When she attempted to locate former employees for follow-up interviews, she found many had moved away, leaving no forwarding addresses. The environmental law firm in Berlin that Rachel had contacted before her disappearance suffered a devastating fire in 1998, destroying many of their records from that period. Though the fire was ruled accidental, Mueller noted in her files that it had occurred just as she was attempting to obtain their complete records regarding Rachel's scheduled meeting. By the turn of the millennium, the case had been officially designated cold. The original evidence, carefully preserved in climate-controlled storage, included Rachel's notebooks, their camping equipment, and Sean's wiped laptop. Technology had advanced significantly since 1995, but even new attempts to recover data from the computer proved fruitless. Whatever information Sean had sought to protect remained hidden. The forest itself continued to change. Dr. Klein's annual surveys showed accelerating losses of old-growth trees, though all the paperwork for logging operations appeared impeccable. "The numbers don't lie," he told Mueller during one of their increasingly rare meetings, "but they also don't tell us who's behind the disappearance. Someone has become very skilled at covering their tracks." As the years passed, only Detective Mueller maintained regular contact with both families, though her official involvement with the case had long since ended. She kept a photo of Rachel and Sean on her office wall, their young faces frozen in time, smiling out from the forest that had swallowed them. Every new detective who joined the department learned about the case through Mueller, who insisted that understanding this unsolved mystery was crucial to understanding the complexity of criminal investigations in their region. The case files, now filling 3 complete boxes in the department's archives, contained thousands of pages of interviews, theories, and dead ends. Each year, Mueller would spend her own time reviewing them, hoping that advancing investigative techniques or new perspectives might illuminate something previously overlooked. But the forest kept its secrets, and the truth remained buried beneath years of silence and shadows. By 2018, many had accepted that the mystery of Rachel Foster and Sean Garcia might never be solved. The forest had changed, the world had changed, but somewhere beneath the dense canopy of the Schwarzwald, 2 young idealists' final story remained untold, waiting for the moment when the earth itself would finally reveal what had been hidden for so long. In late March 2019, the spring thaw had barely begun when construction crews broke ground on a new hiking trail designed to connect the eastern and western sectors of the Black Forest. The project, meant to promote sustainable tourism, would inadvertently unearth the truth that had lain buried for nearly 24 years. Marcus Weber, operating an excavator along the planned trail route, noticed something unusual in the freshly turned earth. What he initially mistook for tree roots revealed itself to be something far more sinister: fragments of weathered fabric and unmistakably human remains. Work halted immediately as he radioed his supervisor, setting in motion a chain of events that would finally break the silence of the forest. The Baden-Württemberg State Police forensics team arrived within hours, establishing a careful grid pattern around the discovery site. As they methodically excavated the area, the scope of their finding became clear. 2 sets of skeletal remains lay side by side in the acidic forest soil, partially preserved by the very environment that had kept them hidden for so long. Among the remains, forensics officers discovered a camera, Rachel Foster's missing Nikon, sealed inside a waterproof dry bag. The device itself had deteriorated, but its memory card remained intact, protected from the elements by its plastic housing. The discovery sent a surge of anticipation through the investigation team, who immediately recognized its potential significance. Detective Petra Mueller, now nearing retirement, arrived at the scene as the sun began to set. Standing at the edge of the excavation, she watched her younger colleagues work with careful precision, knowing that every grain of soil might hold crucial evidence. The location itself told part of the story. Less than 3 kilometers from where Rachel and Sean's tent had been found in 1995, but in an area so dense with vegetation that previous searches had never penetrated its depths. The following days brought a flurry of activity to the normally quiet forest. Forensic anthropologists confirmed what Mueller had already suspected. The remains belonged to Rachel Foster and Sean Garcia. Dental records provided the final confirmation, allowing their families to begin the long-delayed process of mourning. But it was the camera's memory card that would prove most revealing. Technical specialists worked painstakingly to extract its contents, using advanced recovery methods that hadn't existed when the couple first disappeared. After 3 days of careful work, they succeeded in recovering several dozen images, and most crucially, video footage from the night before the couple vanished. The recovered video began shakily, showing Rachel's hand adjusting the camera lens in the darkness. She and Sean had positioned themselves in dense undergrowth, their breathing barely audible as they documented the arrival of several trucks in a clearing. The footage showed men working efficiently by floodlight, harvesting massive old-growth trees with practiced precision. Among them, clearly visible directing operations, was a younger dieter, Schneider. As the video played in the police laboratory, Mueller watched in silence as Rachel's lens captured detailed evidence of the illegal logging operation. The footage continued for several minutes before sudden movement caused the camera to jerk wildly. A man's voice could be heard shouting in German, followed by Rachel's startled gasp. The video ended abruptly. The discovery site quickly revealed more evidence. Tool marks on nearby trees matched the equipment shown in Rachel's footage. Soil analysis indicated the area had been actively used for logging operations in 1995, though official forestry records showed no authorized activity in that sector. Dr. Wolfgang Klein, called to examine the site, confirmed that the surrounding trees' growth patterns showed signs of significant disturbance during that period. They were harvesting trees that had stood for centuries, he explained, pointing to massive stumps nearly hidden by subsequent growth. The evidence was here all along, written in the forest itself. For Mueller, the discovery brought mixed emotions. The truth she had sought for so long had finally emerged, but it came too late to save 2 young lives. As she stood at the excavation site one evening after the teams had departed, she noticed new growth sprouting from the freshly turned earth, tiny seedlings reaching toward the light. Nature's quiet reminder that even in places marked by darkness, new life continues to emerge. The forest had finally spoken, breaking its long silence with evidence that would bring justice to those who had waited so long. Rachel's camera, her final silent witness, would ensure that the truth about what happened in the Black Forest in 1995 would finally come to light. As Inspector Maria Braun methodically spread the recovered evidence across her desk at the Environmental Crimes Unit headquarters, the magnitude of what Rachel Foster had documented began to emerge. The restored footage from the waterproof camera bag revealed far more than just a simple illegal logging operation. It exposed an intricate network of environmental crime that had operated unchecked for decades. Frame by frame, Braun's team analyzed Rachel's final documentation. The footage showed sophisticated heavy equipment operating under cover of darkness, the kind that shouldn't have been anywhere near a protected forest zone. More telling were the markings on the harvested trees, centuries-old specimens, some dating back to the medieval period, their rings telling stories of climate changes and forest histories that could never be recovered. The investigation team brought in Dr. Wolfgang Klein to analyze the footage. His expertise helped identify specific trees and locations, mapping out an operation that had systematically targeted the oldest and most valuable specimens in the Black Forest. These weren't random cuts, Klein explained, pointing to specific frames. They knew exactly which trees would fetch the highest prices on the luxury furniture market. Some of these specimens were worth hundreds of thousands of euros each. As they delved deeper into the recovered evidence, a pattern emerged. Dieter Schneider's logging operation had created an elaborate paper trail of legitimate permits and documentation, all carefully crafted to hide the true nature of their activities. But Rachel's camera had captured what the paperwork concealed: the systematic destruction of protected old-growth areas under the cover of darkness. The team's financial analysts traced decades of transactions, revealing a network that stretched from the Black Forest to high-end furniture manufacturers across Europe. Schneider's operation had specialized in providing supposedly impossible-to-source wood, marketing it as reclaimed or salvaged timber to mask its illegal origins. The profits were staggering, millions of euros funneled through a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts. Inspector Braun's investigation revealed how Schneider had maintained his operation's secrecy for so long. Local officials had been paid to look the other way, documentation had been falsified, and anyone who asked too many questions found themselves facing subtle but effective pressure to remain quiet. Rachel and Sean had been the only ones to gather concrete evidence, and they had paid the ultimate price for their discovery. The environmental impact assessment proved equally disturbing. Analysis of satellite imagery showed the progression of the illegal harvesting over 24 years, revealing patterns of destruction that had been carefully disguised to avoid detection. The lost trees represented not just irreplaceable natural heritage, but critical habitat for numerous protected species. As the investigation built its case, Braun's team uncovered more victims of Schneider's operation. Other environmental activists, who had come close to exposing the truth, had been systematically intimidated or forced to leave the area. Rachel and Sean's murder had sent a powerful message, one that had kept people silent for nearly a quarter century. The recovered footage provided the final pieces of evidence needed to move against Schneider. Rachel's camera had captured not only the illegal logging operation, but also clear images of the man who had built his fortune on the destruction of protected forests. The same face, though now lined with age, still occupied the position of respect he had used to shield his criminal enterprise for so long. In the end, it was Rachel's thorough documentation that would prove to be Schneider's undoing. Every detail she had captured, every frame of footage she had risked her life to record, would now serve as testament to both the crime and her dedication to exposing the truth. The evidence she left behind would ensure that the ancient trees of the Black Forest had not fallen in vain, and that those responsible would finally face justice for their actions. In the early morning hours of May 12, 2019, a convoy of police vehicles silently approached Dieter Schneider's estate on the outskirts of Freiburg. The aging timber baron had just returned from his morning walk when Inspector Maria Braun presented him with the arrest warrant, his face draining of color as he recognized Rachel Foster's name among the charges. The evidence that had eluded investigators for 24 years now formed an insurmountable wall around Schneider. Rachel's recovered footage provided a devastating timeline of the illegal logging operation, while forensic accounting revealed a complex web of transactions linking the stolen timber to some of Europe's most prestigious furniture makers. During his initial interrogation, Schneider maintained the calm demeanor that had served him so well over the decades. But when Braun played the recovered video footage, his composure cracked. The younger version of himself on the screen directed workers with practiced efficiency, his voice clear as he ordered the harvesting of protected trees that had stood since the Middle Ages. The investigation team methodically traced every connection. Luxury furniture manufacturers in Milan, Paris, and London had paid premium prices for what Schneider marketed as exclusively sourced Black Forest oak. Each piece of furniture represented the destruction of irreplaceable old-growth trees, some over 500 years old. The profits had been astronomical, nearly 40 million euros over 2 decades. Rachel's final footage proved particularly damning. The camera had captured Schneider's voice giving direct orders to his crew, followed by the crucial moments when he discovered Rachel and Sean documenting his operation. Though the video ended abruptly, forensic evidence from the burial site corroborated the sequence of events that followed. Former employees, protected by immunity agreements, began coming forward. They described Schneider's methodical approach to harvesting protected trees, using specialized equipment to minimize visible damage to surrounding areas. Their testimony painted a picture of a man obsessed with secrecy, who would stop at nothing to protect his illegal enterprise. The luxury furniture connection provided the final pieces of the puzzle. Investigators discovered that Schneider had created an elaborate certification system, complete with forged documentation, claiming his timber came from legitimate sources. High-end manufacturers, either willfully ignorant or actively complicit, had asked few questions about wood that shouldn't have been available at any price. As the evidence mounted, Schneider's carefully constructed world began to crumble. His former allies in local government distanced themselves, while business partners rushed to cooperate with investigators. The man who had once ruled the Black Forest timber trade with quiet authority now sat alone in an interrogation room, facing the consequences of choices made decades ago. Detective Petra Mueller, watching through one-way glass as Schneider finally confessed, thought of Rachel and Sean. Their determination to expose the truth had cost them their lives, but had also set in motion the events that would finally bring justice. The forest had kept its secrets for 24 years, but in the end, Rachel's camera had spoken for the ancient trees that could no longer speak for themselves. The investigation revealed the full scope of environmental damage caused by Schneider's operation. Hundreds of protected trees had been illegally harvested, each one representing an irreplaceable piece of the Black Forest's ecosystem. The true cost, measured in lost biodiversity and damaged habitats, would take generations to fully understand. Schneider's confession, when it finally came, was as methodical as his crimes had been. He detailed how he had built his illegal logging empire, how he had maintained silence through intimidation and bribes, and finally, how he had dealt with two young activists who had threatened to expose everything. His words, recorded in the sterile interview room, echoed with the same calculating precision that had allowed him to evade justice for so long. The Baden-Württemberg courthouse fell silent as Judge Marcus Weber delivered his verdict in what had become known as the Black Forest Timber Trial. Dieter Schneider, once the respected patriarch of Germany's luxury wood trade, stood motionless as the judge detailed his crimes. Life imprisonment. The sentence reflected not only the murders of Rachel Foster and Sean Garcia, but also the devastating environmental impact of his decades-long illegal logging operation. Throughout the 6-week trial, the evidence had painted a devastating picture of systematic destruction. Rachel's recovered footage played a central role, her final documentation providing irrefutable proof of Schneider's direct involvement. The young journalist's voice, captured in those last moments, had echoed through the courtroom, bringing many observers to tears as they witnessed her unwitting documentation of the events that would lead to her death. The prosecution had methodically demonstrated how Schneider's operation had targeted the oldest and most valuable trees in protected areas of the Black Forest. Dr. Wolfgang Klein's testimony revealed that many of the harvested trees had been saplings when Columbus sailed to America. Their loss represented not just environmental damage, but the erasure of irreplaceable natural history. Financial investigators uncovered the full scope of Schneider's enterprise. 43 million euros in illegal profits, laundered through a complex network of shell companies. The luxury furniture manufactured from his stolen timber graced the homes of Europe's elite, each piece representing ancient trees that had stood for centuries before falling to his saws. Catherine Foster and Miguel Garcia sat through every day of the trial, their faces showing the weight of 24 years of uncertainty finally lifted. When given the opportunity to address the court, Catherine spoke not of vengeance but of legacy. Rachel and Sean died trying to protect something precious, she said. Their work must continue through stronger protections for these irreplaceable forests. The verdict catalyzed significant changes in forest management across Germany. The Baden-Württemberg government established the Foster-Garcia Forest Protection Act, implementing stringent new controls on timber harvesting in protected areas. Every logging operation now required multiple layers of verification, with particular focus on old-growth sectors. Detective Petra Mueller, watching from the gallery as Schneider was led away, reflected on the case that had shaped her entire career. The young officer who had first walked through that abandoned campsite in 1995 had spent 24 years carrying the weight of this unsolved mystery. Now, in the twilight of her career, she had finally witnessed justice being served. The site where Rachel and Sean's remains were discovered underwent transformation. The Foster and Garcia families worked with conservation authorities to establish a memorial grove, marking not just the location of their tragedy, but celebrating their commitment to environmental protection. The young oak tree planted by Miguel Garcia all those years ago now stood tall, its branches reaching toward the ancient canopy above. Dr. Klein's subsequent survey of the affected areas revealed the true extent of the damage. Schneider's operation had removed over 300 ancient trees, creating gaps in the forest canopy that would take centuries to heal. Yet amid the destruction, signs of renewal emerged. New saplings pushed through the soil, their growth protected by stringent conservation measures born from this tragedy. The luxury furniture manufacturers who had profited from Schneider's illegal timber faced their own reckoning. NY established foundation funds for forest conservation, though skeptics noted these gestures came only after their complicity was exposed. The industry underwent a fundamental shift, with transparency and sourcing verification becoming paramount. Inspector Maria Braun's Environmental Crimes Unit used the case to build a comprehensive database of protected trees, implementing new monitoring technologies to prevent future illegal harvesting. Regular drone surveys and satellite monitoring became standard practice, creating an additional layer of protection for the forest's most vulnerable areas. The Black Forest itself seemed to exhale as justice was served, its ancient boughs still harboring countless untold stories. Rachel and Sean's final story had emerged from decades of silence, but their legacy lived on in every protected tree left standing, in every new conservation measure implemented, and in the renewed commitment to preserving these ancient woodlands for future generations. As autumn painted the forest in brilliant hues that year, Catherine Foster and Miguel Garcia stood in the memorial grove. Surrounded by the timeless presence of the ancient trees their children had died trying to protect. Above them, the canopy whispered with age-old secrets. But now these whispers carried hope that Rachel and Sean's sacrifice had ensured these majestic sentinels would continue their silent watch over the Black Forest for centuries to come.